Do you want to read more books? That's the topic I'll be addressing today in The Right Question. I'm Daphne Gray Grant, the publication coach. I have a question from Emma Williams, a writer based in Columbus, Ohio. Here's what she's asked via email. I eagerly await the reading lists you publish twice each year, and I can't believe that you managed to read 52 books in 12 months. How do you find the time? How do you suggest I manage to read more books myself? Thanks for the question and the compliment, Emma. For anyone who isn't familiar with my reading habit, I publish a list of all the books I read each June and November. These lists date back to 2010. The link is below. When I started keeping my book list, I remember only one year in which the goal was a problem. Round about early October that year, I realized that I was nowhere near my goal of 52 books. I made some quick calls and emails to friends and colleagues, and then drew up a list of very short books. With a combination of avid reading and very short books, I managed to hit my goal by December. Ever since, I've been much more careful about pacing myself. This means I work really hard to finish at least 26 books, ideally more, in the first half of the year. But even if your goal isn't as ambitious as mine, you can certainly increase the number of books you're reading. I offer 5 tips for you here. Tip number 1. Choose material that you really like. Don't think of reading as a vegetable that you have to choke down because it's good for you. Make a cheesecake by focusing on books you really love. If this limits you to Harlequin romances, so be it. Once your reading habit is established, you can stretch yourself to other genres. But get the habit nailed first. Remember, de gustibus non est disputandum. That's Latin for, in matters of taste, there can be no dispute. If you look forward to your reading, you're going to do it more often. I love books that get me so engaged I feel as though I'm watching a really good movie, or, better yet, a fly on the wall in someone else's really interesting life. This is what brings me back to reading. Tip number 2. Give yourself a daily goal. I read 52 books a year because I've told you I'm going to read 52 books a year. I've made a public commitment. You can do the same thing by telling other people in your life how many books you intend to read each month or year. When I start a book, I generally check the number of pages and divide it by 7 to see how many pages I need to read to finish the book in a week. Of course, this is a soft goal, not a court order, and frequently life intervenes. I may have social events or a family emergency that I have to deal with. But if too many days pass in which I haven't read a word, then I know I need to make some adjustments to my life. Number 3, make reading your default position. We all eat several meals a day, brush our teeth, and get 6 to 9 hours sleep a night. Some of us even manage to work in some exercise. Put your reading in those same categories. Make reading something you do without thinking about it. Always carry a book with you. This is especially easy if you have an electronic reader like a Kindle or a Kobo. Then, whenever you're unoccupied, standing in line, or waiting for public transit, grab your book and start reading. It will amaze you how much you can read during times like these. Tip number 4. Track your reading. I've kept a book journal for the last 30 years, even before I started my 52 books a year habit. In this journal, I note the following: the name of the book, the author, the year the book was first published, the first sentence or two, my feelings about the book, the date I finished reading it. This list used to be a nuisance to keep when I had to write it by hand, as I did in the 1980s. But now that I keep the list on my computer, it takes me only a couple of minutes. It's also delightfully self-reinforcing. The more I read, the more I want to read. Tip number 5. Remember that holidays offer an excellent time to catch up. When I say I read 52 books a year, most people assume I read one each week. Truth be told, I almost never read that way. When I'm on holiday, for example, I often read a book a day. This style allows me to put reading aside at other times of year when I may be buried in work or too busy with other distractions. I also pay extra attention to the books I take away with me on holiday, making sure I have a good selection of titles I'm really likely to love. Reading is the best hobby there is. It's inexpensive, particularly if you make good use of your public library. It reduces stress, it's fun, and it increases our empathy. Finally, let me wrap up with a quote from the writer Lemony Snicket, also known as Daniel Handler. Never trust anyone who has not brought a book with them. Emma, the very best thing about reading is that it makes us better writers. If you want to be a writer, you need to be a reader first.